Hello and welcome to episode 27 of my series as I build my way through the battle games in Middle-earth magazines. That was hard for me to say. This is part 3 of 4. I was wrong last time, I thought this was the last one. And I was wrong about what I'm going to be building this month as well. This month is the Great Keep in the centre of the castle, not the big tower in the corner. That's next month. You've got to wait another month for that one. But looking at the build, it's going to be a really good fun one. I'm really excited. What I'm going to be doing for my other build, the second part, is putting a bit of time into making sure that the gatehouse I built last time round fits in with the rest of the build. So I probably won't be showing all that much of it. I'll probably show you my plans and what it looks like and give you a little bit of a talk around it. But last month's video went very long, and frankly it will just be more of the same. So if you want to see a lot of the techniques that I'm going to use in this video, then go and check out the first 2 in the series. That's last month's and the months before. So episodes 25 and 26 I can count as well, and you'll see a lot of the techniques, so go and check them out. Anyway, let's have a look at the magazine, let's see what it says, and then let's get started on the build. So, the fortress keep. The keep is at the heart of any stronghold and is often also the last line of defence. Within its walls lies not only the quarters of the lord of the castle, but also sanctuary when all else seems lost. Here we look at building a keep in the style of the Great Hall of Helm's Deep. That's really cool. So the materials you need are going to be the same as the others. So polystyrene sheet, hot wire cutter, PVA glue, the ceiling tiles. That's probably the most awesome material and technique that I've picked up out of this series. Really cool. Styrene sheet, 2 centimetre thick. I've just got XPS there, so that's what I use. Foam card sheet. I have some very thin XPS here there. Craft knife, steel ruler. Get yourself a safety ruler if you don't have one. They're really useful. Pen or pencil, 20mm wooden dowel, junior hacksaw, mounting board, cardboard basically, masking tape, balsa wood rod and sheet, bamboo barbecue skewers. Wow, they're really pulling out the stops here. Modelling wire, plain paper, textured paint. So I will show off most of the techniques very briefly that I've used in the previous videos, but like I say, for a deep and in-depth look at this, go and watch the other videos because I don't want to repeat myself over and over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gather together the materials we need to start on part 1, which is the platform, and we'll build through like we normally do. Please let me know in the comments if you're going to build along, or if you have built along. And what I forgot to say in the intro, despite reminding myself over and over again, is stick around to the end, because last month Tyler from Prop Fox very kindly gave a prize to the viewers of the previous video. So if you've commented on the previous video, then you'll be in for a prize draw, and I will be making that draw and announcing the winner at the end of this video. So stick around to the end. And I did just want to say one other thing. The instructions in the previous video, which for the gatehouse that he sent me, were very much in progress. So all of the feedback that I've given was gratefully received, but you should not think that's what you're going to get. It was a work in progress, and as such I'm pretty impressed, because frankly it was totally sufficient. So if he's going to give even better than that, then fair play. But I did just want to make that clear. I wasn't fully aware at the time that it was a work in progress, and yeah, like I say, I was impressed at the end, but I do need to make sure that that's very clear. Anyway, onwards, let's get to this build and see what this fortress keep is going to look like. What we have here is a 40 centimetre square block of polystyrene, which is what they suggest to use. So the keep is raised on a stone platform with steps leading up to its imposing doors. We will make the foundations separately from the keep itself, so they may be used individually or combined as you wish. Now that's a really cool idea. The basic platform is simply a square cut from a sheet of 5 centimetre 2-inch thick polystyrene. Here we are. We chose to make the platform 40 centimetres or 16 inches square to make it an impressive base for our keep. from the centre of one edge of the polystyrene, you will need to cut a square about 5 centimetres by 5 centimetres. Into this polystyrene cube, cut a set of stairs with a hot wire cutter as shown. Now, here I am actually going to diverge slightly from the build, and I am going to show this technique because at the end of the first video that I did, which was for the walls, someone suggested to show how you go about doing these sorts of things if you don't have a hot wire cutter, which is a really good idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show how I'm going to cut this without a hot wire cutter, very carefully with a knife basically. But then I'm going to show how I would go about making the steps without a hot wire cutter. So basically sandwiching layers together. And it's a relatively simple process, but it's a really good thing to show off, and thanks ever so much to the person who suggested it, because yeah, I wanted to do it last month, but there wasn't a good opportunity, but this is a perfect opportunity. So I brought my ruler out and I've marked the centre, and I've also marked the 2.5 centimetres either side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that out. So I have some very small 90 degrees here, which are really useful. These are basically heavy carpenter's squares. So I can basically draw my line and then get myself a ruler. I don't have a small one to hand, 1 second. Here we are, that was professional, wasn't it? And what I'll be able to do is mark 5 centimetres up on each of those lines, and then we will have our square. Now I'm using a Sharpie because I want to be able to see it, and because I know looking ahead that all of this is going to get covered over with other stuff anyway, so it doesn't matter if I've got any overspill. So there we are, that's what we're going to cut out. Now, the problem with expanded polystyrene like this, which you won't have if you use XPS or a more dense type of material, is it bubbles, as most people know. So if you're not using a very sharp knife or a hot wire cutter, and you really should use a hot wire cutter for this, but like I say, I'm going to try and do it without, then you're very much risking tearing the material, and that's what you want to avoid. And the other thing with the hot wire cutter is it does actually kind of seal it a bit because it's hot, so it actually makes the material slightly tougher. So if you can go with a hot wire cutter, do. Now I've just realised, pulling out my Stanley knife, that I have very little blade left on this, and I really need to have a long blade, so I'm just going to change the blade on that very quickly. I'll be back and show you the rest of this technique. There we are, now we have the full length. So as everything when you're using a sharp knife, be very careful. So easy to cut yourself. I've recovered now from the cut that I did a couple of months ago, but if you remember, I was walking around, it's there, with a very big cut because I was just stupid and I cut towards myself. So what you do when you're cutting the expanded polystyrene is you need a very sharp knife and you need to be very patient. So I'm going to put some music on because it makes a very nasty sound, and I'll show you how long it takes. There we are. So the thing to notice is as I was cutting to the corners, I was cutting towards the corners and keeping the blade perpendicular and upright, rather than trying to cut too far into the corner away from me or away from the blade's end. I was cutting towards, and then I was able to rotate and cut that way. And now, hopefully, this will work. Let's see. Right, so even with as careful as I was, you can see that I've managed to get some bobbling. So this is why a hot wire cutter is a good idea. Now fortunately, that's a long way inside, and we'll now be about to resolve that with how we're going to do the steps. So I'm going to tidy that up. I might make this a little bit wider actually. I might make it, I might cut another couple of centimetres out, and I might do that with a hot wire cutter now that I've got that started. But you can see, just because it's going to be easier, it is easier with a hot wire cutter, but you can cut this stuff, though you might make mistakes like that bubble, with a sharp knife, but you need a very sharp knife. You need to be very patient as well. So I'm going to get this to the correct dimensions, and then I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like, and then we'll work on the steps. As it happened, I did use the knife because I decided I'm going to stick with this. I'm not going to cheat, so that was cut out with a knife. And here were the 2 extra sections, and I've gone for 8 centimeters wide as it happens as well. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to make the steps, and the way we're going to make the steps is we're going to make use of the blue foam which I have here, which is what I'll be using instead of the styrene sheet. This is XPS, and I've just measured, and I'm going to need to have 5 steps. So we're going to need to go, and then that'll mean that there's 1 step up to here. So I'm going to need to go up in 5 layers of this from the bottom to the top. So what we'll do is we will cut a section that will be 8 centimeters, which is going to be not far off that width, but not quite, so we can't use that one really for that. We're going to cut a width of 8 centimeters, and that'll be the bottom one, which will be 8 by 5. And then we'll do one that's 8 by 4, and then one that's 8 by 3, and then one that's 8 by 2, and that probably won't be enough, as it happens. So I might need to dig this back another centimetre, but I'll work it out and I'll let you know. So the way we'll do that is with the sharp knife again. So the same Stanley knife, we'll mark out the dimensions on these scrap bits which I've saved, and then cut them out using a sharp knife and the 90 degrees to cut along, and it will work really well. So I'll get myself all organised for that, and then show you how I'm going to do it. We'll put some music on and I'll just do the cutting while you're listening to some funky free music from YouTube. Well, there we are. As you can see, I've got some steps. They're not perfect, but they're certainly better than nothing, and they will lead up nicely to the top of this little gap here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue those together, and I am going to use PVA and clamp it and leave it overnight to dry, because I'm running out of the end of my building time that I've got available now anyway, so I may as well do that right. And then what we'll do is once they're dry, I'll be able to glue them in place and then move on to the next steps. So I have lots of clamps, as regular viewers will know, many of these, and so what I'll do is I'll put a layer of PVA on each one and then clamp the whole lot together, sandwich it up and leave it overnight. So you want to put a small amount of PVA, not too much, so let's do the first one. And I'll show you how much is too much or too little. PVA doesn't want to be on too thick when you're gluing things like this. I do have some gator glue, but I don't want to use it in this case because it expands, and I'm not going to be able to clamp this all that well, so I don't want to be having it blowing apart and ruining the work that I've put in. So you just want it to be really a thin layer like that. Okay, and then you can put it together. And what I'll do is I will do that for all of the layers, and then when that's done, clamp them all up, and I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like tomorrow when we're about to glue it in. So this has been clamped overnight, as you can see, and should be secure enough. And what I'm now going to do is stick that in place in here, and for that I am going to use gator glue because this is going to be squashed in. It's not going to be worrying about expansion, and it will be nice and secure, and it will also go off much quicker than PVA, so I can crack on with the build. The thing after doing this is going to be to get the cladding on the outside. So I'll get this glued in place really quickly now, get myself ready, and then we'll clad the outside of the building, and then we're going to be on to my favourite bit, which is sticking cardboard down on top. But anyway, yeah. So let's get this done. I'll bring you back for the cladding for building the defensive wall, as the instructions call it. That fit in really nicely. However, there's a little bit of a gap at the top of the top step. So what I'm going to do is come along with some wood filler and just fill that gap. Just now, before I do anything else and do any other kind of texturing or what have you, because if I don't do this now, then it will just annoy me through the build. So what is it they say? A stitch in time saves 9. that will dry nicely. Just a very thin skim. There we are. Perfect. So when I come to paint that now, there's not going to be a little gap, and it's not going to really annoy me. And go, you idiot, you didn't measure right. So there we are, filled. So get that cleaned up, and then we'll have a look at the next step. So the next step is step 2, the defensive walls. The platform is surrounded by a defensive wall made from thin strips of polystyrene ceiling tile. This tile should extend above the platform, making the lip all around about 1.5 centimetres or half an inch high, but avoiding the steps. Obviously, you don't want to put a wall across in front of the steps. Ensure that the beveled edge, which is this edge here, is pointing upwards. Next, cut narrower strips of ceiling tiles and glue them to the back of the lip, making the walls double thickness in exactly the same way as for the tower battlements in pack 28. So what I'm going to do now is take this over to my Proxon and cut it. I've got 6 centimetre, not 5 centimetre thick polystyrene, which is why that was a little bit more complex to do than just a 5x5. It was a bit thicker. So 8 is perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, so this is 6, and I'm going to cut it at 7.5 centimetre strip, tall strip, making sure that I keep the bevel on, and then glue that in place, and then I'll stick the other side on. And I won't film all that, because if you want to see how I do it, then watch the earlier videos in this series. And I'll bring you back for the next step when that's all done. What I will do is use dressmaker's pins to hold it in place, just to say that you're not going to be able to clamp something this big. My clamps, many as I've got, aren't quite large enough to do that securely, I don't think, so I probably will pin in place. Anyway, I'll bring you back when it's done. So while that's drying, I'm going to get stuck into building the Great Hall, but I did just want to point out one thing that I decided to do slightly differently to the instructions, and you can see it's very nicely clamped in place, as you would expect with me. But if I zoom right in on here, what you'll see is I've actually done the bevel down the outside as well as the sides of this stairs, and I just think that's a really nice little touch, makes it look a little bit like a column. So yeah, that's what I did. So what we've got over here is we've got some 2 centimetre thick XPS, which is green, and what we're going to do is build the base and the ceiling and the roof within the same task. Cut a 30 centimetre or 12-inch square from a sheet of 2 centimetre thick styrene to serve as the base. And then cut another one basically. Put that second one aside because it's a roof. From the centre of one edge of the first square, cut a rectangle about 5 centimetres by 2 centimetres and turn that into steps again. And I will do that the way they say. I'm not going to do it with slices this time. I've shown how that's going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure and cut, and then I'll get the stairs in place, and then I'll bring you back for step 2 when we're ready for that. So the next thing is the walls. And it says to cut out 4 identical rectangular sections from your sheet of foam card. In my case, it is this black, this black PV XPS, which I'm going to need to score up with a wire brush before I do anything else as well. So don't forget that. And then to mark a doorway out. Now, what I've done is I've got my card, and I've measured out a template that you can see here, cut it out with my knife, and now I'm going to be able to use that template both here and to make the doors and to also do the cladding, so that's going to be useful. Now the doors that they describe are square, so the doors are square, so what we're going to do is in this piece we're going to cut out this square, and then in the cladding we're going to cut out the oval, the archway, and do that 3 times, one here, one on either side, and that's how it's going to work. So I'm going to get that done, make sure that this lines up with the centre, make sure that I've scored over all of the 4, otherwise I won't be able to paint it. Just remember that if you're using something shiny like this, it does not accept paint very well at all, so get yourself a wire brush. And then I will also cut the same size out and do the cutting for that with this template, and then I'll bring you along and show you what it looks like. I'm just going to show a little bit more, because what I've got here is the 4 walls, and I've cut out the doorway as you can see at the front, and what I'm going to do now is glue them all together. Now I'm going to make use of this fantastic bit of kit that was bought for me by my parents, which is basically a magnetic metal tray with a bunch of magnets that can sit at 90 degrees, and so you can pop them in and hold make sure that something stays true and at 90 degrees. And the cool thing with it is that as in this case, you don't quite have enough space to put a magnet on both sides. It comes with like a spare metal plate, and you can put your magnet on the one side and the metal plate on the other, and then it will hold it at 90 degrees and you can move it around and get it in place really, really nicely, which is really useful for this kind of build where you're trying to assemble something that's actually quite flimsy, as you can see, and you want it to be square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this magnetic trick and PVA glue and more dressmaker's pins, and also just to say a historic moment occurred during this build. I bought 5 packs of these magnetic pins in Belgium. You can see that they're from Belgium. 4 years ago now, maybe, when I first ever started making terrain, I thought they're going to be useful. I bought 4 packs. I have just finished the first one. So I clearly overbought, but what's really awesome is that I haven't had to go out rushing around looking for them. So yeah, that's pretty historic, I think. Anyway, I'm going to crack on now. Little thin bead of glue down each edge, push a dressmaker's pin top and bottom and move on. And I've done it offset, so this one overlaps here, this one will overlap here, this one will overlap here, and this one will overlap here, so it will be basically square and also basically the same length on each side, which makes it easier for the next step. So I'll get that done, let that dry, and then we'll move on to covering the walls. That was quite easy, and it is actually able to be moved, which I was a little bit surprised by. What that does mean is I can straight away come along, paint some PVA on the bottom and stick it down to the base as they suggest. Now I'm a little nervous of this because obviously I'm not really going to be able to pin it and secure it in place, but let's follow the instructions, and most of the time when I'm not sure about something it turns out that they're actually right. The next step after this will be doing the cladding, and I will show you how to do that as well. So I'm going to paint along the base of all this as you're seeing and glue this in place and then leave it because I'm not going to be able to move it now, and I'll bring you back when I get to the next step and show you what it looks like. This is dried securely onto the base now, so the next thing to do is covering the walls. So cut 4 pieces of polystyrene ceiling tile the same size as your foam card walls. That is a bad advice, because what that will mean you'll end up with is a square, kind of a 90-degree gap in each corner, which will then need to cover painfully with cardboard, and who wants to do that? Certainly not me, and probably not you. So what I would suggest you do is cut these 10 centimeters high, so they're the same height as the wall, but slightly wider. So as you can see, this one overhangs, and what you then do is you offer it up, and you can decide whether which one's going to be an overhang and which one's not, and you can mark and cut. So for example, if I'm going to follow the same pattern as I did before, where the overhang is going to be from the front, then I will take my piece that's going to be the front piece, my piece that's going to be the side piece, which will give me the width, and I can then mark the width. And you can see that I'd marked out where the edge of the existing wall was, and now what I can do is I can come along with my 90 degrees here, and I can, oh, I'm not in shot, apologies. You can see there where I've marked it. I can then come along and I can draw that line down there using my right angle, and that will then mean that when that's glued onto the front here, it will have an overlap, which means this one can butt up against it all the way around in the same pattern I did on the base. So the only other thing to point out here is that we're going to need to do doors, and it also calls for archways, and that's one of the reasons why I've measured the edge of the wall as well. So basically what we've got here is where the doorway is. And the way I did that, quite simply, was to offer this up where I want it to be, get my pencil in there and draw some lines. So I know exactly where the door is going to be and is going to appear on this front cladding, and then what I can do is I can take my template, which I cut out, and I can draw around it. And now we are drawing around the whole thing, including the archway. So that's going to want to be cut out, but additionally they suggest that you want to have an archway on either side. So what you're going to do is you're going to measure from there to there and from there to there and position that so that it's equidistant, and you're going to do the same thing on all 4 walls. So 3 archways on all 4 walls, and that is how they're suggesting that you do it. So I'm going to get that done. I'll glue it on using a PVA, I'll clamp it using my clamps, and then that will be the Great Hall walls done. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. The next section is doing the pillars for the top bit and doing the flagstones for the bottom bit. You can see that I've got both of them together here and they're looking pretty good. However, it is now time for the traditional oops, I made a mistake and I'm going to try and fix it stage. What we now need to do is put these pillars either side of the door, but you can see because I did the steps to match these steps, the pillars are actually going to hang over the edge. So I've been thinking about this, looking at it a little bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use again of my wood filler, and I'm going to filler in the gap, filler in the steps here and here just to give it a little bit of a more solid base, and then I'll do the pillars. But let me talk you through what the pillars will do, because it's pretty easy. It's pretty similar to a previous build on the hilltop ruin. However, I'm going to make use of the dowel that I've got now. So this is 2cm dowel. Or 1.5 centimetre, one of the two, so just thin dowel. What it says is cut the dowels to the height of the walls, which is 10 centimetres, and then score them into quarters. So just draw a line around each one to make it look like they're sections, and then glue them in place in the centre columns on each wall. So I'm going to get that, going to get this built up and get these cut, scored and glued in place, and I'll show you what it looks like when that's done. And the next step for underneath, just moving that out of the way, I'm going to, a bit noisy, sorry, I'm going to do the very, very boring process of cutting lots more cardboard and sticking it all over this area. So when that's done as well, I will also show you that next step, and we're getting close to finishing on this, so I think it might be time to start focusing on the while I'm doing these boring processes. Let's have a look at the advanced build and trying to fit the gatehouse with the portcullis and that into this build as well. So I'll probably start that next. Let's have a look at the advanced build, which again I'm not sure 100% how this is going to turn out. It's going to be an adventure for us all. So what you can see here is the build that I finished last month, and here is the other side of the bank, other side of whatever the this drawbridge is going over. So, and I know that I'm going to want to do that, and I'm going to want to do that on this A4 sheet of MDF. What I'm going to do right now is glue down the landing which this goes down to, and get that glued down, and then I'm going to look at putting some XPS and building up a contour of a ramp. And I might actually end up doing a contour, do the ramp in two parts and have a second A4 piece coming off somewhere so it ramps up. Because what I'm thinking of doing, and someone, I don't know who it was, I'm very sorry someone said this, that this doesn't necessarily need to fit into the existing walls, and if you can see, I mean, it's pretty comedic how different how the size difference is. What this could be is a keep which sits by the moat, which could be a dry moat, and it could even be relatively isolated. So the dry moat runs around, and then you wouldn't necessarily have to have a continuation of walls going round, and maybe this could sit out in front. If you think about it in terms of Lord of the Rings, on the Pelennor Fields you had, and I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it, but you had the defensive wall halfway across the Pelennor, and probably I'll remember the name as soon as I stop filming. And so this could be something like that. So almost an isolated keep, which is where the access across the ditch is guarded, but it isn't part of the main defences. So that's what I'm going to be modelling. So having said that, I'm going to do the bank on this side, which will have the ramp up, and I'm going to work on the towers on each end, like I said I was going to, but I'm not going to worry about marrying it up to the existing walls that I've made for the main castle. So yeah, so glue this in place with PVA, work out how I'm going to do the ramp, whether I'm going to do it in two sections, and then what I'll do is I'll bring you along and we will start to build the towers. I'll probably only build one tower on camera because it will be very repetitive, but what I would like to end up with is the towers on each side, and maybe the keep over the top, I think. Obviously I can change my mind, as you know, so yeah, let's see how this part of the project goes. So let's have a look at this entry ramp, and I think I'm going to mirror this a little bit for the exit ramp as well, but I'll talk about that in a second. So what we've got here is two A4 sheets of MDF, which is what I'm going to use, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to have a ramp which is going to come up from this corner over here and ramp up and then turn a corner. And the reason for this is it's going to make it not so easy for people to get a battering ram up, and it's going to be a sensible defensive solution. So the way I'm going to go about doing this is I've got 2 sheets. These are offcuts of that I made obviously earlier of the 5 centimetre thick, which is going to be the right height for this to marry up against this. Pretty much I might have to shave a little bit off, but that's fine. But what I'm going to need to do is cut out a key here so that it can fit in around the existing kind of like level there. So I'm going to do that on the hot wire cutter. And then what I'll do is I will glue that in place, glue this in place, and then I will use the hot wire cutter as well to, then I'll shape it all down, and then I will use the hot wire cutter to cut along the line at the edge of this MDF, and then glue this section onto the second MDF, which will mean that there will be absolutely smooth gradient, so I won't have to worry about that, and also totally flat. So that's my plan. So I've put some dots here which mark out where the extent is. I will then be able to make this all into a wall, and so it will look really, really striking, and I think it will look really nice along with the rest of the build. And what I was saying at the beginning, I will also probably need to do something similar for the other side, and I will probably do that, however, not with a dog leg, because when you're inside you want to be able to get your troops and what have you out quickly. So once you're past the defences, so I'll probably turn the A4 sheet round and have it just going straight away and straight down to the level. So that's my plan. So I'll get that cut and bring you along, show what it looks like when it's done. So while the outside ramp is drying, I've started to plan the inside ramp. And as I said, I'm going to do it straight up. I'm going to do it sat on an A4 sheet of MDF like this, and I'm going to put that centrally. It's not central at the moment, it's not glued down yet. So what I've done is I've cut this to the correct length, and I've just had to shave 1 centimetre off because it's actually just 1 centimetre too thick for this side, but that's fine. And what I'll do now is I will draw a ramp in, probably with a little bit of a lip there. And what I have realised, having done this, is that I'm going to need to do a little bit more work on this. I'm going to need to put some of this cladding down to the base here. Last time, at the end of last video, I was kind of umming and ahhing what I should do, and I was wrong. I should have finished off this. So I'm just going to have to also just attach some more of the ceiling tile here and here to finish it off, and then paint that up, and I'll do that as part of this. I'll just get it done, and then that'll be finished. So yeah, so let's get a bit of a platform at one end, I think, and then a ramp down, and then we'll be good to go. We'll just glue that in place again using the gator glue, which is what I've used for the other things as well, just because it goes off quicker and it gives a really strong bond. We've gone to shake again for this bit, because I wanted to show you what it looks like when it's all set out and before I start detailing. So here we have the ramp up. As you can see, you have to come up and turn a corner to get across to the dry moat, and then this would be where the dry moat would be on your board, so it'll be impassable terrain. And then we've got the actual thing I did last month, which will have more done to it maybe this month, maybe next. And then finally we have the inside and a normal ramp coming down there, which is straight, so it will allow the speedy access of reinforcements, and also just the fact while you're through, so whatever. So there we are. So the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to do some I'm going to basically finish these very quickly. I don't think it's going to take all that long to do this, which is good. So the sides are going to have the same as they're going to be clad with the roofing ceiling tiles, and then the top of it is going to have the cardboard squares, and then it's all going to be painted as dirt here, as stones here, and then this is going to have a track of stones, but it will probably be a little bit overgrown with some weeds and grass and what have you, so make it a little bit more interesting. And then the same sort of thing here, I'll clad this, and then I'll also just do some dirt and stones and that around the base, and the same here. So this will actually be all stone, I think. Well, I'll keep this maintained, and then just do a little bit of kind of like a normal grassy area on that. So yeah, we'll get into the texturing. So I'll bring you along for that, show you if there's anything interesting on you. Yeah, I think that looks really, really good, and it will look really well when it's got the towers. Whether I do that this month or not, I don't know. So we just came to start sticking down the cardboard tiles on this, the slabs on this, and I found that this end had actually popped away. Hadn't dried properly, I hadn't secured it correctly, I obviously forgot to put some pins in. So instead I'm making use of some clamps, and this will now have to sit all day to dry because PVA does take a while to go off. It's always good to have some very big clamps. You can see these are quite long, 30 centimetres, and they're good for this size. So what I'm going to do now is on this ramp, which is the one that is going to be going on the other side, going on the inside, I'm going to take my cut up cereal boxes, cut them into squares and glue them on all the way down as slabs, because I clearly don't like myself very much, and this month is all about cutting squares out of cardboard. I've done so many. On the other side, I'm about to start doing the black paint and sand on the main base of the main build, we'll go back to that in a second in terms of your time, because I've made a mistake there as well which I need to fix, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix that as well. But yeah, project's cracking on nicely. Just not filming as much because a lot of it is repeated tasks from the previous 2 episodes. Right, so to the mistake I made. What I did was I wasn't accurate enough when I cut out this piece, which probably means I'll have to redo the roof as well, but we'll get to that. And you can see here that there is an overhang of this pillar which is hanging over the edge of the base, which isn't great. So to resolve that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back into the bit that I cut it out of, like that. And then I'm going to cut an L shape, which I will then glue on the sides, and then filler it, and then it'll be done. So I will now measure and cut, probably put at least a centimetre or maybe even a little bit more on each side. Glue it in place. I'm going to use gator glue because this needs to be very, very secure, and I will also probably use cocktail sticks pushed through to give it even more structural integrity, and then I'll let it go off and I'll show you what it looks like when it's repaired. So yeah, everyone makes mistakes and I make a lot, and I like to show them because, well, everyone makes mistakes. We aren't perfect. I've successfully saved the surround of the Great Hall. So now we're going to start on the next step, which is step 5, which is adding the doors. The doors are made in the same way as the gate from Pack 9's gatehouse. They're made from a stiff card or mounting board. So what it says is to draw around the shape of the doors, which can see here. Cut that out and then cut it in half and then trim it down slightly, and then make the hinges using the masking tape technique, the folding masking tape technique, and then finally put some thin card front and back. So I'm going to be pretty tight here. I'm going to cut out my thick card, and I'm going to make use of the template to do one side, and then I'll get some more of the same card to stick on the other side, and then that will be fine. So I'm going to get this all cut out, and once I've got all the bits, then I will film again and show you how I'm going to assemble it. Here we are, we've got the 2 halves of the door. We've got the thick central bit, and we've got 2 thinner bits for the cladding, and some masking tape. So what I'm going to do on the masking tape is I'm going to do this for both doors, but I'll just do one door on camera and then do the other off, because yeah, there's no point in seeing this too many times. So there we are, there's one hinge at the top, and we'll get another one at the bottom. I think it makes sense, and I did this before, to have more rather than less in terms of overhang, just because it makes it a little bit more secure when you're actually looking at sticking it in place. Though there might end up being too much and I might need to trim it off, but that's not so hard to trim off. So we'll stick the super glue, the masking tape on, and then using PVA glue I will glue the front and the back on, and then clamp it to make it completely solid, and then once it's totally dry I will bring it back, because then we will draw on the actual look and feel of the wood panelling. So there we are, there's the front, and then a bit more PVA glue on the back. So I'll clamp that now, and leave that to dry for a good few hours. I'll bring it back when I get to the next step, and I'll do exactly the same process on the other door. While we wait for the doors to dry, I've got my favourite thing to do. I need to put slabs down on the inside of the keep. Yeah. So I'm going to do that done. I've got a bunch cut up here. You can see this brush was used very recently to paint black. Doesn't matter because it's all going to get painted over anyway. And what I might do is take advantage of this and actually slab the outside as well. Take advantage. Anyway, yeah, more slabbing. I love it. Sticking squares of cardboard down to polystyrene. Yes, 40 years old. This is what I do for fun. Humans are a strange bunch. Right, onwards, stop rambling, beard. So as you can see, we have a floor. Now it's still a bit wet in places, so I'm not going to do this step yet. But what I've decided to do is step away slightly from the instructions. The instructions would have you put the door on now. Now, I've got a couple of issues with that. One of which is I want to paint this, I want to make this nice, and I don't want to get the wood or get the wood of the doors covered in the same colour paint as the walls and the floor. And also, I want to make sure the door's open and shut. And when I start to put texture down, that's going to change the dimensions slightly. It's going to obviously lift the floor a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all of the painting now of the stone, and then I'm going to put on the doors with the door frame. Now the doors are done. They are now dried. You can see I clamped them with 4 clamps, and they are absolutely perfect. So once I've finished this process, then I'll be able to attach the doors, and I'll just bring you back once I've finished this process because it's the same thing. I'm going to be making use of my black terrain paint here, and a little bit of scattered sand to give it texture. I'm going to avoid putting any sand onto the pillars, so I will basically cover over the floor and the walls and the inside of the walls with the same thing, and then when that's done and painted black, then I'll bring you back and we'll do the doors. I've got to do the roof as well, which I will also probably do at the same time. So that's probably the next thing you'll see is working on the roof. But this is going to be going on in the background with all the sand work and then dry brushing and all that stuff, which you've seen in previous videos. So I'm not going to repeat that. So yeah, enjoying this build. It's really flowing nicely. It's a really nice building, and I'm really pleased with how it looks. So yeah, enjoying it. So got a long way on this now. Thought I'd do a quick in progress and talk about the next steps, which I'm going to do now. So you can see that the keep has been all done and painted black. I have not yet fitted the doors, which I'll be doing not next but nearly next. And then over towards the other build, that is now also in the same situation where there's a load of dry brushing needing to be done, and then I'm going to need to do the flocking and the terrain and what have you around the edges of the ramps, but everything is pretty much in place there. So really good progress, really close to done on this side, and actually really close to done on this side. And the next thing that I'm going to do, if I pan even further around, you can see there, that is the XPS that I was going to use for the roof, but as I said, it is just too small to go on, so we're going to need to do a little bit of cutting or what have you. But I'll clear this all away and then bring you along for the next clip, which we'll be talking about that in detail, and then we're going to get started on the roof and then looking at the detailing. Alright, so let's talk about roofs. This hull will have a removable roof, so it is practical to use in your battle games, which is a cracking idea. Take the large styrene square that you cut out earlier. This will form the basis of the roof. Right, so this is the large styrene square, but it isn't quite big enough. It's actually close-ish, but it's not quite big enough. So what I've done is I've gone away and I've cut a slightly larger one. So there we are. So that overhangs more, which is just going to give a little bit more space and be a little bit better to use. So the other one will go into my spares box and will be used in another project. So stick a square of thick card or foam card to the underside of it. This square will be just under 28 centimeters square, as it needs to fit snugly inside the walls of your hull and will prevent the roof from sliding around when it is in place. Another cracking idea. So what I've done is I've got some of the black foam that I like, and I've actually measured that very carefully to fit exactly within the walls. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to score this up with my wire brush and then glue that and weight it down and leave that overnight to set with PVA, so that will then act as it says to kind of like hold this from moving around when it's sat on top. So I'll wire brush that and then stick that in place. But let's look at what the next step is as well, because that'll just be brushing and gluing. On the top of the roof, construct battlements using strips of polystyrene ceiling tile. These can be made double thickness in exactly the same way as the walls around the foundation, but will need to be about 3 centimetres high, or 1 1/4 inch above the roof level. Once these are dry, use a hot wire cutter to create embrasures all around, forming crenellated walls. Cover up the corners with card bricks as usual to hide any rough joins. So that's what I'm going to do. These are techniques that I've used before. I will be making use of strips very like this. That's obviously too thin, but that will probably work for the inside wall. So there'll be a strip on the outside, this will sit on the inside. The things to remember are where you've got the bevel on the edge of these tiles is to keep that on the top of the outside. So I'm going to do all these processes off camera because they're all things I've done before in previous videos in this, even this short series, let alone another series. And then I'll bring you back when it's done, when this is all painted and dry brushed, because that's going to be the next step across the lot. And then the next thing we'll probably look at is going to be the doorway, which is in there waiting to be fitted. So I'll get the roof done, out of shot, and we'll have a look at the doorway next on camera, but that'll probably be a couple of days for me, but about 30 or 3 seconds for you. So let's get stuck into these doors. So the first thing I need to do is something that I almost forgot, to be honest, is I need to paint them. So I can't glue them in place because I need to paint them. And before I need to paint them, I need to put the planks on. So what I'm going to do is just using this black biro, I'm going to really score in so that we get an indentation, and also so that the black shows up through the paint, so it's a very thick black. And we're just going to do 3 lines like this, and I'm going to do this on both sides, and I'm going to do it on both doors. And I don't particularly care if it's a bit wibbly wobbly, because we're going for the rustic look, which is always useful when you're hobbying, when you're crafting. If you can pretend to yourself that it's supposed to be rustic, then you can make mistakes and just go, yeah, but it's supposed to be, you see. Saves me a few times that. Anyway, so I'll get this done, and then once that's done, I'm going to paint the doors, and I'm going to use the burnt umber that I always use, that I used on the other wood in this build, just to keep it tied together, and also I quite like it anyway. And then I'm going to have to wait for that to dry before I glue these in place, because I'll get dirty fingers and I'll smudge it if I try to. So I'll just paint these, and then next time you see them, you'll see them painted, and we'll be looking at gluing them in. So I thought I was ready to start fitting the doors until I realised I'd missed this, but yeah, never mind, it won't take long. I should be able to get this done even this evening. It does dry quite quickly. So there we are, we've got some planks on. Let's get them painted, and then I'll bring you back to glue them in place. So the doors are now ready to hang, but what I've realised I want to do is I want to dry brush the inner tiles, so just the tiles in the courtyard, with this pinky colour rather than with the grey, so I just wanted to look a little bit different. And I'm going to do a heavy dry brush, as you can see, attempting to not to go on the walls, but it doesn't matter if I do, just to make it a little bit different. And why not do that? I mean, at the end of the day, it's your model, you can do what you want, and this will just make it look like this is a little bit more of a higher kind of like profile or whatever building, where they've gone and got some pink marble or something and tiled the inside. It's not just for fighting, it's going to have some kind of like social value as well. So I'm not going to do it too much, I've almost done it already. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry brush the walls with grey, having said that, because I think that's what I want. So yeah, remember that, it's your model, do what you want. Make it look cool. So yeah, there we are, nicely dry brushed. Looks a little bit more like a, not just grey, but with a little bit of colour on it. There we are. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is dry brush the entirety of this model, and once I've done that, then I can actually finally fit the doors, because until the doors can be fitted, there really is no point, until it's dry brushed, there's no point in fitting the doors, because I'll just keep knocking them and get grey on them, which I don't want to do. So yeah, I'll do the dry brushing, and then we'll come back and we'll fit the doors. So now we're ready to start the doors, and I think this is going to be a bit difficult to film, so I'm going to talk you through what I'm going to do, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So if we pan a little bit to the right, what you can see is that I have my doors here, and what I've got is some balsa wood, which I'm cutting, so just a big chunk of balsa wood, and the door will be sandwiched between that balsa wood and the wall. And I'll have the same thing on the other side. We'll have a slice of balsa wood here, and that will also be sandwiched between the wall. And that will then open very nicely, and I've checked it a few times, I'm pretty happy with that. It will open and shut very nicely inwards, but not outwards, which is what it says to do. And it looks great. As you can see, the painting has really pulled out a very nice kind of like wood effect. I'm very, very pleased with how they look actually. I may put some bands across later, but I'm not sure. For now, I'm happy with that. So little offcuts of balsa wood, glue them together, and then leave that to dry, and then that will be all but done. And then it's just a case of finishing off the roof, which I'll do next, and then wrapping up. So pretty cool. I've got some more to do on the advanced build, but the main build is next to finished. So now it's time to do the cutting of the crenellations, and I have this tool here which has a 3 cm wide routing bit. Now you can see that I've done a little bit of measuring, and actually 3 cm is going to not work, because what I want is I want to have the corners basically not to be cut out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark where I'm going to cut using my marker here, and each crenellation is 3 cm wide. So if we cut 2 cm in and leave that, then we have 26. So if I say I'm going to cut 3 cm there and 3 cm there, I'm going to have to do some quick mental arithmetic, or maybe even do this while I'm not on camera, and just try to get it so that it's even. Let's see if that's going to work more by luck. It is. There we are, that was lucky. So we're going to cut that out, then a 2 cm, then a 3 cm. Oh no, it didn't work. It didn't work. I did screw up. Right, I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to get this measurement right, and then I'll tell you what it is. I have worked it out. 1.5 centimetres on each side, and then 3 cut, 3 gap, 3 cut, 3 gap. So let's see if I have actually worked it out, or if I've mucked up again. So we're going to cut here, cut here, cut here, cut here, and cut here, and hopefully that's going to be fine. So what I actually have to do is come along like this, which is a bit awkward to do, and the way that this works, which makes a bit of a nasty noise, so I'll probably skip over a bit of this, but you press down, you hold, and it clicks, click, 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 clicks till it's heated up, and then you're happy. So let's see whether I can show you this with one cut, and then I'll probably just go on and do the rest off camera. And there we are, you can see that cuts really nicely. You get a really clean cut, but like I say, it does take a bit of time to warm up, and it is a bit noisy, so I'll do the rest of it. I'll do all around here, and then the thing to do after that, I may as well do now, is get it warmed up again, and then we're going to do a slight angled cut. Oh my, I was worried about that. My little bit of the dressmaker's pin got in the way. So then we do a small angle cut. There we are. So that's what I'm going to do all the way around. Cut through, angle down, and I'll bring you along to for the next step, which will, well, I'll bring them when it's done, and then I'm going to have to put the cardboard squares on this again. Yes, and then do the finishing off like the rest of them. But I'll get this round and we'll have a look at what it looks like when they're all cut. So there you are, that's done. I had a little bit of separation here, so I've put some more PVA glue on that bit. But basically, yeah, 3 cm wide gaps and roughly 3 cm wide high points, and that looks really, really nice. I think I'm really pleased with that. It's going to look really well when it's finished. So the next step, as I've said, is to do yet more of the cardboard squares, which I'll do over the weekend, and then put the sand and then paint it and then dry brush it, as you've seen me do. So with that done, we're then going to look at doing detailing, so putting stairs inside and a hatch and what have you. So I'll get this all finished and then we'll look at the detailing. So probably the next thing we're going to look at now is finishing off the extra build. So we're going to look at how we're going to do the terrain around the sides of the ramps. So the next step I'm going to work on is doing the terrain around the sides of the ramps. Now I've got this mixed up grout. There's a link in the description below for how I make it. I mixed this up for another project, got it left over, and I was going to do something like this anyway, so I decided I may as well use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint that on over all of the exposed areas of MDF to give it a colour and also to give it some texture. So I don't think I'll have enough left over, so I might have to mix some more up, but that's fine, I know my proportions. And once that's dried, then I can come along and I can do the final bits and pieces, like scattered rocks and other things like that. So I'm just going to do this and then let it dry, and then I'll bring you along for the next step when I've done it. So it might take me a little bit, because I think, as I say, I'm going to need to mix some more up, and I might indeed do 2 coats. I often like to do 2 coats of this grout because it doesn't cover that well on the first coat. You're more just getting it down, and then the second coat is the one that actually does the final kind of touches that are the most important part. So anyway, and obviously I'll also be continuing on with the dry brushing of the stonework. As you can see, I've not actually started that yet on these, but I wanted to do this first because I want this to dry. So yes, I'll carry on with the dry brushing as well. So yeah, I'll get this done on all of these 3 sections and then bring you along for the next step very shortly. So what we're going to do now is come to the final part of this extra build, which is adding the details and putting the flock on. So what I've got here is, and other things, and this is not flock obviously, these are bristles from a brush. And what I'm going to do, they're not very hardy for gaming, so you want to put them somewhere where you can make them a little bit more long lasting. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to put them against the wall and glue them top and bottom, which will just make them a little bit more likely to survive gaming. So let me zoom in on that a bit. There we are. So you can see we've got glue top and bottom, just PVA, and I had a paintbrush fall apart on me, which is what I'm using the bristles from. So these are going to be growing up the wall and they're not going to be standing out to one side. They work really, really well if you're pouring resin, where you can maybe build up around the base and then they really don't come out. But for a dry thing like this, you really do need to have them going up against the wall. So I'm going to be scattering some of those around across all of these sections. I've got the 3 sections to do. And then what I'm also going to do, which I'll do now, is I will put some flock. So I have my shop bought flock, which I'm trying to use up, and my terrain glue, which is watered down glue with a dash of dish soap to prevent mould, and it does also have a slight impact in terms of making the whole thing flow a bit better, but mainly I put it in for the mould prevention. And what we're going to do is we will brush on the PVA mix, the terrain glue, and then scatter our flock on. And I'm going to do it quite sparse, and then once that's dry I'll put another coat of the PVA over the top to seal it, and it will turn into like rock and it'll be really, really tough. And then what I'll do is we'll put some tufts maybe on over the top if I've got time, but as you can see I really want to do this quite sparse. So that's enough. So I have 2 colours, so I'll get those ready. So here we've got a dark colour, so I apply this just by sprinkling. And then what I normally do is once I've done the light and the dark, I come back again with the dark. So I do 3 applications. And if I'm using a 3 colour mix, which I do quite often, then I will also come back over the top of the and just scatter some more dark. And the reason I do this is I find it just ties it together a little bit better and makes it look a little bit more natural, because otherwise you end up with quite a two-tone look. This somehow seems to make it a little bit more natural looking. So we'll let that dry, and then, like I say, put another coat of the triangle over the top to seal it, and then I'll come and do the flocking. So I'll get that done on all of the boards, roughly the same layout, roughly the same amount. You can see it doesn't take very long, and then I'll leave it to dry for the day. One of the things I decided I wanted to do was on the inside of the keep. So let me just show you. So where the doors are here, on either side of the doors, I've got these big wooden beams. Now, I should have thought of this before I stuck them in, but that is how it goes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paint those like a nice red colour or something, or quite a rich colour. So I'll paint those a rich colour, and then on either side of those, I decided that I wanted to have a shield with crossed spears behind it, and so I 3D printed some shields with a really nice kind of like a Celtic knot symbol on them. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue the spears into a cross like so, and then when that's kind of dried, I'll come back and I'll glue the shield on top, and then I'll prime and paint them. So I'll do most of that off camera, because it is just going to be a case of blobbing a blob of super glue on, waiting for it to dry, blobbing another blob of super glue on, waiting for that to dry. I might do it the other way around. I might stick the one spear on first and then stick the other spear on after. I think that'll probably mean that I'm less likely to glue things to my underneath, but then I'll just prime it grey, paint the spears very simply. I'm not going to do a fancy one because you're barely going to see these, but it's more for me, and then we'll get them glued in on the inside of the keep. The other thing I need to do is start building the steps. So the next thing that I will do is I will show you how I'm going to build the stairs. I'm going to use, I'm not sure whether I'm going to use the same technique as I did for the main stairs, or whether I'm going to just slice it out of some XPS. I probably will just slice it out, to be honest, because I'm running short on time now, as always. But we're pretty much done on this. Just need to do these fun little details. Very exciting. So I've glued together the packs of shield and spear, and they will go, as you can see, just here. So what I'm going to do now is I have my dark red kind of paint that I really like, and I'm just going to paint that on here because I want it to be quite a strong colour. So I'm going to get that painted on there now. The other thing that I'm going to do, which hopefully will work, is as part of the dressing up of the inside, I 3D printed this awesome kind of, it's a big chair, but it could act as a throne or something, with a nice kind of runner base, and I'm going to try and paint that up to put that inside as a bit of scatter terrain. It won't be glued in, it will just be available, but I think that works quite well. I did pull this chaise longue out of the same kit, but no, that's not going to work. So I'm going to put this red paint on and then go and prime up the 2 shield and spear packs, and also this throne pack, and then I'll get them painted up, and then we'll work on the stairs. Now I'm going to do the stairs straight up, I've decided, so they're going to come up just straight up on the side wall here, not going to go around the corner, and that's mainly so that I've got a place for my throne when I put it in. So yeah, I'll be back shortly to do that. It's time for me to finish this build off, do these last few steps, literally, because what we're going to do is the stairway. So I'm going to make use of this white foam, and I'm going to argue at the moment about whether I'm going to stick it in or not, so I'm going to design it as if I'm not going to glue it down, so I can drop it in if I wish. And I am going to do it straight up down. I'm not going to do a dog leg. One of the other reasons I've decided I'm not going to do a dog leg is I could do a dog leg from the left, which is fine, but if you do a dog leg from to the right, which is what they suggest, your defenders are actually going to be hitting the wall when they're swinging. They're going to be at a disadvantage, whereas the attackers have all this open space, This is why spiral staircases spiral the way they do. Anyway, so that just means that, yeah, I just don't want to do it. So I'm going to do a straight up staircase, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use heavily of the Proxon. So first of all, I'm going to cut across that line there, which is the length I want, and then I'm going to mask off my steps. And you can see it can be nice and shallow because of how much space I've got, though of course I probably want to cut a little bit less than that, to be honest. Let's mark that a bit less aggressive, a bit less tight fit. There we are, so we'll cut it there. And I'll mask off and then cut very carefully using the Proxon. Paint it with the sand and paint, and then more paint, and then dry brush it. So it's going to be basically the same technique as I've used for all the rest of it. So I'm not going to show too much of it. I am going to do the Proxon. So cut down there, cut steps in using the Proxon and paint it. So the next time you see it, that'll be done. And then the final thing is to put the actual hatch on, which I will show you how I'm going to do. So we'll do that together. And I'm making a good job downstairs at the moment of painting up my furniture. So I'll show you what that looks like also. So anyway, I'm going to get that cut and I'll bring you along very shortly to show you what it looks like. As you can see, the shields and spears are glued on, which was a bit of a pain, which is why there's no there's no footage of it, because I struggled and there's a few swear words. But it's just glued on with super glue, but it just was a real pain in the backside to get it to stick. And also you can see that we have some stairs. And if I put the lid on, you can see that the lid sits on fine with the stairs in there. Now what you couldn't see, and what you're going to be able to see in a second when I rotate this, turn it right around, is I've put the chair in. I suppose you can call it a throne if you want to, it's pretty grand. But yeah, so there's a little bit of furniture in there. Now there's space for more furniture, and I may do that eventually at some point, but I'm not going to overdo it. The point of this is not the furniture, it's to build. So now the final thing to do is to do the hatch that will go on the roof, which is basically just a square painted in wood. It's not going to be very hard, but that's coming next, and then this build is done. So the way it says to make the trapdoor, which I probably wouldn't make it this way if I wasn't following these instructions, but yeah, let's do it, is to get 2 3cm by 3cm squares of balsa. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting this 3cm strip, and as I always say when you're cutting balsa, multiple passes, don't try and go through it in one go. So yeah, so we're going to cut that there, and we're going to cut that again at 3 centimeters, and then so we'll end up with 2 squares of 3 centimeters each. That's what we're looking for. And then what it says, which is going to prove to be quite fun, it says to cut the centre out of one of them. Now, balsa wood is quite fine and delicate, so this could go very badly wrong, but what I'm going to do is just as carefully as I can, and using multiple strokes, as I keep saying, getting bored of myself saying that, but multiple strokes is the way to cut anything really, not just balsa. Patience is the key. What we'll do is we'll cut the centre out of this, like so. And then what it says is to glue the 2 together. So what you end up with is like a multi-level wooden trapdoor type affair thing, which is quite cool, I suppose. I may do this, I've done this with cardboard, to be honest, not balsa. But then I'm not a big fan of balsa because it's so easy to break. It can be so flimsy. As you see here. There we are. So what we're going to do is I'm going to glue those 2 things together. I'm probably going to use super glue because it will dry quicker, and also it doesn't warp it as much. So let's see if my super glue, which I fell out with earlier when I was trying to do that display, see if it'll work. It's getting a bit clogged, so I'm just going to get myself a pin and unclog it. So there we are. I stuck a pin through the hole and that's unclogged it. So yeah, we're just going to use super glue, like I said, because it won't cause warping, unlike PVA, which does cause warping. So there we are. We have that. Then what we're going to do is just use the side of the knife to reinforce some scores into the wood, make it look like planks, like so. And then what it says to do is to get strips of card and glue a couple along between there. So I'll get that done. And then what we'll do is we will stain it. Now I'm going to use my same technique that I did for the doors. So I will use the burnt umber from, what's the company? I always forget, from Winsor & Newton. So my Winsor & Newton raw umber even. And I'll use that to paint this up. So I'll get the strips stuck on and then paint it, and then we're done. Well, there we are, the build's complete. And before I wrap up, let's go to the prize draw. As you will know, there was a prize last month that was being sponsored by Tyler from Prop Fox, and he did join me and he did a draw, so I'm not going to go on rambling anymore now. Let's go to that and I'll see you again in a second. So I'm joined by Tyler from Prop Fox, who has offered wonderfully to sponsor a prize. So thank you ever so much for that, Tyler. The prize is... Could you tell me what the prize is?
The Carriage House kit in a little card kit here for 28mm gaming.
Fantastic. And I've used a different one of those on Rosie's Model Railway, which I love very much. So thank you very much. So the idea was, and what we came up with, was that someone that commented on the video last month will get entered into a prize draw, and then they will win this magnificent prize. So Tyler has all of the names. There were 12 or so people, I think, something like that. So in the Prop Fox box. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I just say great to work with you. Nice to see everybody seem to like it. So
yeah,
cool.
I think I have more comments than I normally do. So yeah, can't knock that.
Let's give this a shake.
Yeah.
Make sure it's fair, you know.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I don't know about you, but I am.
Yeah, find it out. Here we go.
Right, everyone at home, you need to be doing the tapping on the desk. I won't do it because it will sound terrible. But yeah, everyone do a drum roll. Drum roll.
We have got Casey Mad.
Casey. Now, Casey has been with me watching my videos for a very long time. I know him from the Paint All the Minis Discord, and he is a top lad. So I am so pleased for you, Casey. I will be in touch. I already know who you are. You already know who I am. So I'll be in touch for an address. And then this wonderful young man will be popping something in the post for you. So congratulations. And thank you again so much for this. It was a wonderful offer, completely out of the blue. Didn't expect it. So that was really, really cool of you. So thank you.
Thank you to everyone who participated.
Yeah, maybe we could do this again at some point as well with something else. Maybe I'll ask someone else. You may have started something. Who knows? Well, congratulations again to Casey. You have been a real supporter of this channel, and it was just so cool to see your name drawn out that hat or box, the Prop Fox box. And yeah, really, really chuffed to bits. And I think that your winnings are already on their way to you. So congratulations. And thank you to everyone who commented last month. Do keep commenting below. I love to read them. It's not just for a prize. That was prompted mainly by Tyler. I had no idea he was going to do it. It was really, really cool. So yes, do comment below. Do reply to all of them. No prize this month apart from my undying gratitude and you putting a smile on my face, which for me, that's a prize. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments below. Do that, and yeah, and I'll see you next month, or maybe the month after. Life is particularly crazy at the moment, so it might be that the next build doesn't actually get done in time. And if that's the case, then that's the case, and this is a hobby, not a job. So thanks for watching, and I'll close off by saying, as I always do, thank you so much, and please stay healthy, stay safe, and stay well.